Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Outdoors, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the outdoor hospitality industry. From campgrounds and RV parks to glamping, outdoor resorts, adventure travel, and ecotourism, we'll be discussing all things outdoor travel and hospitality, so join us on Good Morning Outdoors every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Morning, Alex. Morning, everybody.
You know, it's been a couple weeks since we've both been on here, and I think it's exciting for us both to be back. I was out, for a bit of sickness. You were out at the conference and had Robert last week, which was a really great guest, but it's nice to kind of get back to the core and for both of us to be back here, Matt.
Well said. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
I know we're both gearing up for camping season. We're kind of, if you're like most parks in the Midwest or even like us here in the Northeast, May is kind of the kickoff of camping season. The weather sure is getting hot. So if I look like I've been outdoors this morning, it's because I have. It's that time of year with park cleanup. But excited to take a little bit of a break and talk some great stories and things happening in the industry today.
Yeah, we've got some fun stuff. Good to be back with you. And yeah, it's going to be a historically hot day in central New York. So buckle up. It's beautiful, but a little oppressive, honestly.
Yeah, I know. It's a little unusual, but I guess I'll take it over some of the snow we've been having. And for those of you not in the Syracuse area, like both Matt and I, send us a comment. Let us know if you're tuning in on the live broadcast. Let us know where you're tuning in from. If you have a campground or a property that's opening soon, let us know what day you open. I always like to hear what everybody's up to and, what's happening at your property. So with that, Matt, I think let's kick things off and start with a good story today from the Outdoor Industry Association, kind of talking about the retail side of the market that consumers are experiencing, talking about retail growth, how the industry has really been transitioning, both in terms of recent news with tariffs and everything happening in the political market, but also just what's happening with consumers more broadly and how are they experiencing outdoor rec coming up. A good kind of thing for me that really stuck out from this article was the spending trends, kind of looking at people maybe buying that $1,000 kayak is what was cited in the article, or something that maybe is more of a bit of a kind of bucket list outdoor item, like those bigger things that typically relate to an experience, like somebody buying a camper or buying a kayak or buying a large piece of equipment, to maybe paring it back a little bit, still experiencing the outdoor economy, but doing it in a smarter way. What jumped out for you with this article?
Yeah, we're starting off with a couple kind of macro stories here. This was a good one to start with. We're seeing positive but modest growth in outdoor retail spending and business. It's great to see because the market was down a little bit in 2023. So we're back to growth, although very modest growth. Growth is better than, decline in the business, that's for sure. Kind of qualitative side of things. Anecdotally, there's been a lot of talk about the casual consumers, and that came up in this report, which I thought
kind of
was
coming out of COVID. It was, that person who kind of dipped their toe in for the first time.
Right. And, I thought it was kind of funny because it ranged from like, the weekenders, hikers, people who kind of dabble a little bit, but also it was kind of about like fashion and accessories and like looking like you're outdoorsy versus maybe actually being really hardcore outdoorsy, which
right. The people who want to buy the hat and the Patagonia vest and just look it, as you said, it's a lot of just feeling like, even if you're a city person, that like, oh, I weekend in the Catskills, or I weekend in the outdoors, even though you may not ever camp or do any of that stuff.
Yep. Footwear came up a bunch. I think we're in an era of, on the very casual side of business casual, maybe in certain work environments, if you are still going to an office. So I can see that with kind of new age tech or kind of modern companies where people are wearing some outdoorsy stuff to the office. I identify with that. I mean, it's been so rainy and even snowy here that I've been looking for like a good pair of waterproof shoes that aren't like stiff hiking boots. So that kind of that resonated with me to read that.
I'm rocking my Columbia waterproof shoes now. They're great. It's yeah, as you said, I think it's becoming cool to kind of relate to the outdoors. It's something that a lot of people, when you kind of talk activities, there's kind of people who are into sports, people who are into all kinds of things. And I think being into the outdoors is becoming a popular thing to say that you do. It's healthy. Everybody, can really relate to those experiences and adventures no matter where you come from. And as you said, there's a bit of FOMO going on right now of people who want to kind of feel like they're in it, but are just not that person who's going to drop $1,000 on a kayak or something like that. They'll instead spend $100 on a great pair of shoes where they can look the part and take that outdoor adventure into the office or in the home instead of actually having to go out and do it.
Right. Price sensitivity also came up, which I think is important to note, reflective of kind of the economic environment, some uncertainty. Price conscious shoppers came up a lot. People chasing lower prices and value. So I think that extrapolates into kind of maybe some greater economic commentary. And in conjunction with that, kind of what they refer to as the core outdoor gear. And that means technical equipment and high-end gear and specialized stuff for activities, that the numbers there are slipping. So there is a decline there, which I think has an effect on, or at least signals kind of an impact on outdoor hospitality.
And I think that relates to our next story as well, to kind of, as you said, tie into a lot of the macroeconomic trends. Matt, do you want to kind of speak on kind of, all of the news we probably all see, but we'll really treat this story from more of the outdoor lens and kind of looking at this through the looking glass of our industry with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Yeah,
well said. So I'm not a political person. I don't think you are a particularly political person, Alex. So we'll stay away from any commentary in that realm. But it's having an effect on our industry, and it's actually come up with, over the last couple months as we've done these shows with the federal jobs and the uncertainty around national parks and national forests. This is another example of that, although in a different sort of arena. President Trump made some comments about firing Jerome Powell that had an immediate effect on the stock market. And then he walked those comments back and said he actually has no intention of firing him. And that then had the opposite effect. It was a negative effect and then a positive effect. The market, I guess, was reading some uncertainty and then regaining some certainty. And this is all centered around interest rates, obviously, which has been a huge subject of conversation and discussion on the investment side of our business. We're in a very capital intensive business, especially when you get into lodging. And it trickles down into the consumer side of things.
Right.
That's
what I would take it to is like, look, we're both heavily involved, obviously, in campgrounds day to day and speak to, our customers regularly who are booking reservations. And I think just a general sense of uncertainty in the market makes consumers tighten their wallets, right? If people don't know what's going to happen, they may not be investing, they may not be spending, they may be saving for bills, and because of the uncertainty of the future. And even cheaper accommodations like campgrounds have traditionally been, or even outdoor hospitality in general, think about the higher end glamping market that we both know well. Somebody just may not be as apt to spend couple $100 a night on that experience, or they may do it less frequently, right? Still may do it for, an anniversary or a sort of a landmark type of stay, but the casual outdoor vacationer is kind of lessening. And we hear that sense from consumers we talk to as well, who say, look, I'm still camping potentially. I just am choosing my locations, more thoughtfully, right? Camping closer to home, maybe instead of going 100, 150 miles out, then maybe staying closer to 50 miles away from home, then maybe taking less trips and more of those landmark big holiday trips like 4th of July or Memorial Day, right? Kind of just getting back to a couple of times a year rather than what we've seen as far as the uptick in numbers over the last several years. So I think more than anything, just the uncertainty with Jerome Powell and what's happening, in the White House and in the political environment is just it's trickling down to consumers, and I think that's ultimately where we'll feel it, as we talked about in the retail side, and then also in the lodging side for accommodation providers like us.
Right, and also on the right, interest rates directly impact RV purchases because
yes,
that's even a slight change in your interest rate and impacts that monthly payment. Most people are financing RVs, or I should, maybe not most, but plenty of people are financing RVs, and they are buyers like a house. They're buyers based on what is my monthly payment, not necessarily what is the overall purchase price. So the more that monthly
and you
payment
combine
goes
that
up,
with the amount of used RVs still in the market coming out of COVID, there's still a really large inventory number there, especially if you see new RV sales slow down. It could potentially be a big headwind on the horizon.
Well
Switching
said.
gears a little bit to sort of more positive news, our next couple stories are really talking about the acquisitions. As you mentioned, Matt, this is a capital intensive business. Our next two stories will cover from two great organizations and sort of portfolio companies in the space. We'll start with our story on Highway West Vacations. They've got a really big national portfolio of a lot of different lodging assets. So they definitely own more than just campgrounds. They have hotels. They have, outdoor glamping kind of lodging businesses. They recently announced they expanded their portfolio with the acquisition of 3 new properties, all 3 of which are out west. So they really bought kind of a block, which I always like to see that. I think it makes strategic sense locationally. You can, have a great regional team to kind of oversee all of those properties. And I think it gives them a presence in California hospitality that they, didn't really have before. Matt, what do you kind of take with this acquisition in Central and Northern California for Highway West?
It's encouraging. I like it. I dove into their portfolio a little bit. I wasn't super familiar with this group. I thought of them as more of a traditional RV park owner, and that's not at all what they are. They own some really cool lodging properties, glamping, traditional hotels, hospitality. Really, really cool. And
they're kind of betting, not that they've diversified with RVs, but they're betting pretty strong on outdoor hospitality lodging in all different forms, as you said, between all of the different kind of assets, which I think plays into your thesis and my thesis a lot too. We like seeing diversification beyond RVs, not that we think RVs are going anywhere, but that's just, it just makes sense where consumers are going and having that kind of entry point into the industry. So really, really interesting. And they branded it well, right? It's Highway West Vacations. They're looking at all of the different ways where people can kind of stay cross property, right? You may want a hotel, of theirs for one stay and stay in a campground for another stay, which I think is super smart as well.
Well said. Yeah. They've got a number of properties in California in wine country. These are the first, it appears to be kind of coastal locations, these 3 new parks. They focus on really premium destinations in the Pacific Northwest. They do have properties in New Hampshire, which I thought was really cool. And so, they've just got some really cool properties. I don't know a ton about kind of the leadership there. That's usually where I go with studying these companies. I think they've done a good job of building a cool brand and kind of keeping it brand focused rather than people focused. At least identifying the brand. So I'll definitely be doing some studying and trying to see who's behind the curtain over there. And
they've been a great player in the industry for a while. They kind of focus on a lot of different types of stays. So they segmented into kind of 4 areas where they want all of their lodging to kind of fall in the bucket. So like lodging in the desert, in the mountains, wine country, and the ocean. So their kind of philosophy is just to focus locations around one of those four things, that those are the types of things that they think consumers will resonate with.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
And then our next story, also on the acquisitions front, somebody we both know well, Kevin Thusen and the team over at KCN Campgrounds, they recently acquired the Elizabethtown Hershey KOA, and that's in PA. They've got some other properties both in PA and nearby. They purchased that Campgrounds of America location for $5.2 million. They obviously are no stranger to the KOA franchise, one of the largest KOA franchisee operators around. Matt, what did you kind of make? This is a pretty sizable acquisition.
Yeah.
This is obviously a Midwest location, which they're no stranger to as well. Like I said, they have locations nearby there already in PA. Really kind of interesting story of how this deal came together, with the owners kind of wanting somebody to really steward the property and be in good hands into the next sort of generation and do the things that they kind of couldn't do themselves at the property over the years that the family previously owned it. What do you make of this acquisition specifically, and then kind of what's on the headwinds for, or what's on the horizon for KCN moving forward?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, this is their 10th acquisition, but I believe they also sold a park. So I think this keeps them they're back to nine parks, which is a impressive portfolio. You and I have kind of seen behind the curtain a little bit and had the pleasure of getting to know Kevin. We're big fans of what he's doing. I love the approach here because it is very campground focused, right? We have this constant debate in this industry of what's an RV park, what's a campground, what's a resort, what's not. These are campgrounds through and through. They are outdoor focused. They are outdoor recreation locations. Some of them may be resort quality, but it says it in the name, KCN Campgrounds, right? They have a definitive mission and path and set of guardrails, and I mean that in a good way, at what they're doing, right? We see real estate investors in this space who are just looking for good deals, and I'm sure Kevin and the team are doing great deals, but they all follow the same path. I think really leaning into the KOA relationship helps that. Hearing the story, we've done a podcast with him in the past, and he's shared the story with how that all transpired. Super interesting. Really sings the praises and shows the power of being in the KOA franchise system, which I think, people either love franchises or they don't.
Right.
There's some good franchises out there. There's some not so good franchises. I've myself have looked at like, oh, should I become a franchisee? And, have debated back and forth. And hearing Kevin's story showed me the power and the potential benefit. If you really go into that and, do right by the franchisor, you're going to get, if they are a good franchisor, you're going to get lots of value back in return. And, KCN has achieved that and created a fantastic relationship. So I'm a big fan. I think they get some efficiencies by acquiring in Pennsylvania where they already had a park, and it's encouraging. I know that they have announced that they're going to be doing some fundraising, and that's exciting. I know just hearing from Kevin that they are very busy on the acquisitions front, so I expect more news from them soon, which is awesome. So love following stories like this, and we'll certainly probably be talking more about KCN in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's they've really done a great job of building that pipeline, right? We're within the KOA kind of brand. It's just one of those things that, look, there's so many KOA locations. Obviously, KOA corporate has bought a lot of park locations recently, but if there are ones that they don't want to operate, there's a great referral path to go to them immediately to say, hey, this is somebody that you should consider selling your property to. This is a great team who can steward that to the next generation. And the team at Hershey KOA has really, done a good job of conveying their wishes. I think Kevin and the team will sort of move that forward and do a really great job with the property moving forward.
Well said.
Our next story, we're going to talk a little bit about, we've highlighted, or I don't know on here, but I know I've written about it on social with some of the electric RV players in the space. Matt, you found this story from Pebble, which began kind of production of their all-electric travel trailer called the Pebble Flow. Really kind of cool space-aged kind of look here to this thing. But there's others in the space that have kind of branched into this as well. They're probably the second or third provider who's kind of come out in kind of full force with an all electric unit. What do you make of this thing? And, I'm just somebody until it kind of gains steam and I see a lot of these things on the road. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the adoption is. I don't know kind of what the numbers look like. I'm not well versed enough to know how many electric RVs are currently on the road, but this is something that, it's interesting to say the least. The unit looks cool. I'm sure the team is doing great work, but as far as wide stream adoption, I'm just the jury's out for me at this point.
Yeah, agreed. But I love it, honestly. And I'm encouraged to hear the news that they are starting production. I think that was a big milestone. You see these startups with these really cool products and you see the prototype or the rendering, but this seems to be real now, which is cool. I mean, it's not an inexpensive option, over $100,000 for the RV. Seems to be well designed and well thought out. The feature list is impressive. I would love to see one, so I'm going to keep my eyes out for RV shows to see if they're going to be at any convenient RV shows. I'm a fan. I think the more manufacturers are in the space, it drives innovation. It's going to push the longer standing manufacturers to come up with similar products, and I think it's going to advance the industry. So I like it. Tax credits, are I think we saw that with electric cars where people became shoppers because of the tax credit. So I think that's something to keep tabs on here. And
I would say our next story too is pretty innovative too. These guys from Azure Printed Homes, or somebody I've seen at the glamping show before, kind of displaying their technology. And if anybody's seen kind of on social media, the traditional houses being kind of poured 3D printed with concrete material, Azure Printed Homes is really interesting kind of in the ADU space, and obviously being more on kind of the park model side. We've gone through RV data on the program here a fair bit. And, this is something that, is just, it's super interesting as far as the funding that they've raised with this. They've just completed their third round of funding coming up here at the end of the month. And they're anticipating to scale to 2,500 homes a year, which is interesting. They're great traditional park model players in the space, people like Croft and Cavco and others that have been doing it for forever. But these are more of that kind of printed home kind of model. It's really interesting. I've always been intrigued with their technology when you see it and kind of look at that. I always just wonder, what's the longevity of these things? They haven't really been in the market for a super long time to get the real wear and tear test of people actually using them and kind of feeling that out. Not to say that they're not well built. It's just we just haven't had the data that we typically know kind of what a traditional park model is that kind of runs its course. But this is something that is kind of, it's interesting. What do you make of this, and really printed homes in general? Do we think that this is something that, I know it's been floated in the past. I don't know that anybody's done it more even on the RV side to make this more of a kind of templated printed thing. I don't know. It's obviously moved from kind of homes now into ADUs and park models. Is this something that will continue to be innovative moving forward, Matt?
I think so. I really do. Where I first came across this was probably through those Instagram reels where it shows the robot, with the bead of concrete and everything. probably a few years ago, saw that and I thought, oh, that's interesting. But then where I started reading about this was actually on another project and from another developer. Is this Icon? Is a company called Icon, and in conjunction with a hospitality icon herself is Liz Lambert, who's the
Yeah,
creator
yeah, yeah.
of El Cosmico, which was a really cool kind of half campground, half hotel, half glamping uh, site, and is now going to be replaced, and I believe it's under construction right now, is a 3D printed kind of landscape hotel is going to be the new El Cosmico. So it's happening. That project was in the press. I'm sure that inspired a bunch of other people to do something similar or to start pursuing something similar.
And I think if more capital kind of chases it with projects like the one that Liz has and there are others that come, I think that will really kind of legitimize that, just as we've seen, projects in capital flowing into the glamping market. If that sort of same trend continues forward into the printed, side of the unit space, I think that will lend credence to that this is real. There are, as you said, real players and providers. And I think honestly, Liz's project will be such a great kind of case study for what you can charge for this, what consumers feel about it, how the project really develops, because she's got a great brand presence and a great base of consumers there anyways. So it'll be really interesting to see how, things kind of move with that moving forward.
Well said. Yeah. And I think it's an interesting kind of business case study, whereas, this group, Azure, has made some noise in the hospitality space. They're upfront, though, that their mission is primarily affordable housing.
Right.
And I do, like, if you want to create a massive business, I think you have to pursue the affordable housing angle. There's just only so many glamping units. I mean, there is tremendous growth in glamping, but
if you look at the underserved regions and places where housing is short, you've got so many more markets to give big deals, right? To sell 50, 100 units at a time instead of maybe you'd sell 20, 30, 40 at a single glamping property, but it's a lot easier to see them kind of take over that space.
Yeah, and if you want to build $1 billion or multi-billion-dollar business, might be tough to do so as just a glamping or hospitality kind of lodging unit manufacturer.
Absolutely. And then me, I like to kind of close things out with some data. We're going to continue the trend here moving forward to this week, but this is a little bit different data from a great reservation provider, CampSpot. They announced really after what they call their biggest booking week, they put out a bunch of press about this that some of you may have seen, kind of calling for that and using that as their PR terminology with consumers. They got around 325 campgrounds to participate in this week, and they say it generated right around 74,000 bookings of folks using promo codes and them doing obviously a big marketing push to their consumers and on the CampSpot marketplace. This is something that I think with all of the news that we talked about kind of earlier in the show, with consumer sentiment being down or potentially could be coming as a headwind for this year, this is a pretty decent sign that is a lot of reservations for 300 campgrounds, even splitting them up, fairly evenly across 300. That's a lot of bookings that were made during this week. And I think it just shows that, look, consumers are maybe more discount conscious. They want a bit of a deal. They want to feel like this is kind of an exclusive thing, that they were able to get a better price and a bigger discount. Matt, what did this data kind of tell you as we wrap up? And what do you think this really says? If you could kind of take your crystal ball out and analyze the camping season for this year, does this tell us anything about what this year is going to look like?
I don't really think it does. For me, it brings about the debate, and it'll forever be a debate of discounting versus not discounting. I think it's a sensitive subject among operators, probably across the hospitality business at large. Do you want to slash your ADRs to gain occupancy, and at what point are you tipping the scale in the wrong direction? Had an
Right.
interesting conversation with an operator this week, and it was all about occupancy versus ADR. You know, you're actually better off if you're operating at a higher ADR and a lower occupancy.
It's also just less strain on the staff.
Exactly, right? Less unit turns, it's less stress on your staff.
And we
less...
know that labor is one of those expense variables that if you can control that, can be such a key to carry through to the bottom line.
Right. You know, I mean, I won't say it's not encouraging at all. It's a good sign. You know, we love to see the booking velocity. That's kind of what keeps you up at night is for some reason is camping or glamping or outdoor lodging demand going to go down. Like that wouldn't make sense. You know, there'd have to be some extenuating circumstance, but you know, that's the ultimate kind of risk in our business. And, you know, so I don't see that. That's encouraging. An interesting kind of stat here was that parks that offered 50% discounts saw a 180% lift in bookings over the previous month, which is interesting because 50% discount is a big discount.
Right.
It's really big. And it does show you that there are price conscious shoppers out there, which in the world of camping, you know, so that means a $60 to $65 site is going for $32.50, which, you know, is prices from 15 years ago.
Right.
You know, so I don't know how to feel about it, honestly. Like to me, a 50% discount's a lot. I don't want to offer a 50% discount.
And I mean, unless you think that you can make that up in ancillary income or you know, something like that it's more worth it to get people to the park and then they'll spend an extra $50. You know, if that's the case and that's the model your park is operating, yeah, I can see that. You know, if every single guest you don't have in is costing you more ancillary income than the discount you're giving away,
right,
it might be you got to find that equilibrium point of what's going to work. I don't know. It's really interesting.
Yeah, here's a stat that, you know, assuming everything's true here, kind of proves what I just said wrong, or maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. If I can get this, if I can achieve what I'm about to say with a 50% discount, I should do it. It says that 71% of guests that booked during this event were brand new customers to the location that they booked at, and that CampSpot data suggests that those guests often return and book direct in future stays, and those are likely
for no discount,
price,
right?
Yeah, full price stays. So it is a lift. So
right, it's kind of your discount is the sort of thing to acquire the customer, right? And even if you can get them to spend that $30-$40 to, you're basically getting $30 to acquire a new customer. You know, if that's the case, you know, we always talk about like return on ad spend in the marketing world, or like what's your CAC and your LTV. You know, that's a really great metric.
Yeah, well said. And it also speaks kind of to our marketing plan, and our mission at our properties is to really benefit from shared marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what this is, right? It's CampSpot coming up with a program for their customers. CampSpot obviously benefits because they get the booking fees and the booking revenue, but the parks benefit greatly, and it's about broadening the reach through multiple brands, multiple audiences, multiple customer bases, all benefiting from a bigger reach, which is, you know, if you boil it down, that's a pretty central goal, I think, in hospitality marketing. It's influencer collaborations, brand collaborations, all the above. And that's kind of, you know, proof of concept here.
Really well said. All right, Matt, I think with that, we will wrap it up for this week. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hope everybody stays cool. As we mentioned early on with the hot weather coming here in New York, hopefully it's nice and sunny where you are. And yeah, hope everybody has a great week. If you enjoyed the show, recommend you share it with a friend, share it on social media, wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you back here next Thursday. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Alex.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.